Cheers, y'all. I am here, and in no way was I tagged to do this, but I just saw the video and the tag, and I thought it was awesome, and I really wanted to do it. So like the drink and the title might indicate, I am here to do the bar and the bookcase tag, which is what was very creatively created by the bar and the bookcase booktuber, who I will link down below with his channel and his original video and all that jazz. So I have a lot of books that I'm going to probably stretch into some prompts. So without further ado, let's get started. I do apologize about the weird lighting, though, on my glasses. We're working with the natural light that we can get in early springtime in the evening. So anyways, the first question, and they will all also be down below, is the old-fashioned, a historical fiction recommendation. I realized when I was looking for and picking up and compiling all these books that I don't actually read that much historical fiction, in the sense that a lot of people consider historical fiction. Technically, Tolstoy, by his use of a place and like the action of the war and like War and Peace, is historical fiction, but a lot of people think of those kind of books more as classics. The one that I did read, and of course it was Kristen Hanna, because I think she's one of the bigger historical fiction writers of right now. I read The Nightingale, and I really do recommend that. It's a beautiful, heartbreaking story. The historical setting is World War II, and it follows two sisters. And I really don't want to give that much away, and also my memory is rough because I read it so long ago that I just want to say it was a beautiful book, and it just really, it was historical, and I really recommend it. So Sidecar, is the next prompt, which is a book with a strong supporting character. And The Name of the Wind is primarily about, obviously, the main character, but this book does have quite a few very strong, very interesting, potentially, like, under-supported by the fans, side characters. And I think the fact that one of them got their own book, or novella, which is Ari as a side character. I know she has a very minor role, but she's just a beautiful character who really adds some depth to the story and creativity. So props to you, Patrick Rothfuss, for the creation of Ari. But there's a whole plethora of side characters in here, from the time when Quoth was at school to like his adventures and all of that. And obviously, Denna is a very strong female side character, which I really love. And also his buddies, and I can't remember anybody's names. It might be time for a 4th reread of this book. But, this is the beautiful 10th anniversary edition. But yes, I think this book has a lot of strong supporting side characters. So, Quoth doesn't need to have all the attention all the time, in theory. And the next question is Manhattan, a book set in New York. I just recently, and I think this is the only book on my shelf that's actually set in New York, read Judith McNaught's Someone to Watch Over Me. It is set in New York, and it follows a Broadway actress as she is like subjected to a tragedy. A mystery person like hit her car, and she almost drowned and like froze to death, and her husband gets murdered very quickly, and a bunch of stuff ensues. But it is primarily set in New York City. They do venture off into the New York upstate area a few times, but primarily it's set in New York, so Manhattan. The next question, after I take a sip here, is A Bloody Mary, a book that scared you or messed you up. I read a good amount of Stephen King, but I honestly don't really think a lot of his books are super scary to me. I think part of that's that I don't imagine a lot of stuff when I read, so that might be a reason. But one of his books that really did mess me up was Mr. Mercedes. The villain, because you basically in this book follow half the chapters are from the detective and half the chapters are from the villain. And I really wish I had the other version of this book that had like the bleeding clown looking smile. Very cool. But anywho, the villain in this book is just really messed up in the head that it took me a long time to read this book, even though I really was wanting to know what happened, and I really liked the chapters by the police officer, but the villain's brain was yucky and it messed me up. I would have to read, I would be able to read a few sections because it alternated of the police detective and then the villain, but every time I hit 2 or 3 rounds of the villain's chapters, I was like, we need to throw you away for a week and read happier things to just not be too traumatized by the villain's internal working. So there is that. The next book is Espresso Martini, or the next prompt, I'm sorry, is Espresso Martini, a book that kept you reading into the night. And the last book, I used to read into the night a lot as a youth growing up, but lately the book that most recently made me stay up late into the night was Jeff Vandermeer's Annihilation. It's book 1 of the Southern Reach trilogy. I was so captivated, and I really needed to know what happened. And being that it was only 190 pages or so, I think I finished this in 2 sittings. 2 times I stayed up very late into the evening reading this book just because I had to know what happened. I read the whole rest of the series. This was my favorite one, although book 2 was quite slow, but book 3 really brought it all together, so you kind of have to read book 2, unfortunately. But this one, honestly, read it as a standalone maybe, but Annihilation was awesome, and I really recommend it. It really did keep me up into the night. The next prompt is Sazerac, a book that left me disoriented. I forgot to get one. Hold on, please. Okay, I am back with Michael Crichton's timeline. So I think Sazerac has absinthe in it. Anyways, go watch the Bar in the Bookcases video because he explains kind of how each drink applies to each prompt. But there's a liquor base that's in a Sazerac that potentially causes hallucinations and just basically leaves you very disoriented. I don't necessarily feel like disoriented after I read that many books, but there's definitely some books that just so much happens that I need to like process for a while. So chose Michael Crichton's timeline. I love his books. I just actually finished recently reading Jurassic Park, but this one was a wild ride and just a lot happens. There's time travel involved, obviously, because of the title, but it's just such a intense book that I kind of like finished it, I remember, and kind of just vibrated for a minute and just, I had to just process and continue like reviewing what the plot twist was and how everything actually came together because this was a trip, literally. So I don't know if that really applies to the prompt, but I'm going to go with it. The next book is I keep saying the next book. The next prompt is a Long Island Iced Tea, a book that is doing too much, bonus points if it works anyways. So in my experience, Haruki Murakami, and this is his fun edition of 1984, The Moon and all that. I picked this one when I bought it because it breaks it up into 3 books, which makes it physically easier to carry around because it's a big chunker. But anywho, this particular book was the first Haruki Murakami I read, and now going back, I don't know. I'm going to need some audience participation on whether or not this gets the bonus points, because when I first read it, I was very confused. There's a lot of different storylines going on and 2 different like timelines that do ultimately intersect, and there's a bunch of magical elements and fantastical like elements, and it was definitely hard to track. I think if I went back and read this now, I would be able to say that I would give it the bonus points, but it was the first Haruki Murakami I ever read, and I really had no idea what to expect going into it, and therefore I was very overwhelmed by the amount of stuff it was doing. So if you've read this and think that he deserves the bonus points, do let me know down below. I know in all of his books that I've read, he definitely does a lot and does like weave it together so beautifully at the end, but I imagine that is also the case with this one. I might just need to do a reread. Well, this is a lot of pages for me right now, so we're not going to reread it immediately, but it'll go on the to-do list. So the next prompt is a book with a love triangle, and I think this is definitely going to be a stretch because I don't read a lot of books that have love triangles, evidently, as I discovered when looking for this, but The Secret History has a minor love triangle between our main character that we're following. Do we get to see his name on the back? It's been a minute since I've read this. Our main character and Henry both like the one female that exists, whose name I also forgot. My memory might be going here clearly, but it's not a super big, like, obvious love triangle. I just know that our main character does, like, ask the girl out a few times, but she's like, oh, but Henry, but then she also does some, like, interacting and commingling with our main character. So I believe that to a certain extent this is a love triangle. It's not as aggressive because it's not a romance book, so that's not a big plot point. It's just like a side event that happens, this little weird love triangle. But I think it still counts. It might be a stretch. Y'all can let me know what you think. I'm now going to be mad about not remembering their name. I think Frances is the name of the girl. And we're going to see if I can find our main kid's name. Richard. Frances might not be the girl. Frances might be another guy. But Richard and Henry both like the one girl who's part of this group of students studying classics. Or when I say classics, I mean ancient Greek classicalism. And at this New England university, this is dark academia. It was fabulous. And as y'all can probably tell, the sun is setting. So I'll try and wrap this up real quick. Sorry about that, y'all, with the weird lighting changes. But the next prompt is Babe Breeze, book with a light, chill, heartwarming vibes. And for that, I'm choosing Neil Gaiman's Stardust. This is, I think, his main book that I was just generally, like, joyous and uplifted throughout. There's magic, there's fairies, there's a little journey. There is some darkness because, you know, it is Neil Gaiman. He's a lot creepier than people give him credit for. But I think that this is just overarchingly a very heartwarming, pleasant story, and I definitely recommend you read this along with everything else Neil Gaiman has written. The next prompt is Dark and Stormy, a book that is dark, thrilling, and menacing. Bonus points if the setting matches. Now, I don't own the first book in the original trilogy, which is Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, so I'm going to just hold up the spin-off written by the David Legenkrantz guy, The Girl in the Spider's Web. First of all, the first 3 books, in my personal opinion, are much better than the 2 that this guy's written, but it is still fun to go back and hop into the world. So, for The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, I do believe that book is dark and thrilling. Poor Elizabeth has just gone through so much in her life. There is definitely menacing aspects to it. It's set primarily in Sweden, so it's a very bleak setting. I think the bonus point is mostly achieved because a lot of the characters are very menacing and dark, and the setting is very bleak, and there's a lot of just very heavy topics discussed, and there's a mystery and murder involved in the book trilogy and these 2 sequels, so I think I get my bonus point on that one. And last but not least, Martini, a classic recommendation. And first of all, I would like to mention that the bar and the bookcase did recommend Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man here, and that is an awesome classic that I don't hear enough people reading. So I again will tell you to go watch his video and check out that book as well. But because I've come to realize that I think Alexander Dumas is one of my favorite authors, I would like to recommend The Count of Monte Cristo. And this is a beautiful edition my mom got me for Christmas, the Barnes & Noble classic. But Alexander Dumas is a fantastic writer. I think his classics, for him being an author that writes classics, I think his classics, the language is very accessible. The stories are always very captivating and gripping. And Count of Monte Cristo is a story basically of a guy who's wrongly convicted, goes to jail, and so there's revenge, there's love, there's romance. The girl he loved did not wait for him when he went to prison, so he has to go deal with that. But it's primarily a story of revenge. It's set in France. I really love this book, and I think it's much better than The Three Musketeers personally. But again, I just want everybody to read this book. It's beautiful. It's my favorite. Please go read The Count of Monte Cristo. Yeah, so anywho, that is I'm going to read the name of the tag correctly, the bar and the bookcase tag, and I think it's very fun, and I chose to sit by my TBR shelf area just to mix up the scenery a little bit. These are my dining chairs. But thank you guys for watching, and I, again, was not tagged to do this video, so I have no authority to do this, but if any of you guys want to go do this tag, please go do it. I tag you. Go forth and do. The more people who do the tags, the merrier. Cheers, and have a great evening, everyone.